one of the oldest communities within the popular towny server, EarthMC, uniquely maintaining a presence visible across the continents of Terra Aurora, with its name being widely recognized throughout the server, its leaders both revered and reputed by many. The EarthMC Catholic Church stands as one of the oldest and most influential institutions within EMC. And yet, for many players, it remains something observed from afar, taboo to some, dismissed by others, but still respected by many. Based on the study of now ancient EMC wiki articles, nearly half-decade-old Discord messages and preserved screenshots, as well as newly opened documents from the EarthMC Vatican Secret Archives and the Holy Inquisition. Today, for the first time in the history of the server, Vatican Media EMC presents a documentary on the history of Christendom within EarthMC. This is the history of Christianity in EMC. The year of our Lord, 2019. The COVID pandemic sweeps across the world. Millions are confined to their homes. A Minecraft towny server known as EarthMC quickly gains popularity, drawing hundreds of players into what would become one of the largest geopolitical sandbox experiments of its kind. It was within this sudden influx of players, as instability spread across the server and countless newcomers sought to establish their own nations, that political fragmentation first defined this new era for EMC. Yet from this very turbulence emerged the rapid consolidation and formalization of states, as stronger entities absorbed or outlasted their rivals. It was in this crucible of instability and state formation that Christianity first began to take recognizable shape on the server. Reconstructing this formative period, however, is no simple task. Much of what survives comes from early wiki articles written by the nations themselves, documents shaped as much by rivalry, self-promotion, and propaganda as by historical accuracy. Distinguishing fact from embellishment, genuine record from egocentric narrative, remains one of the principal challenges in studying this early era. What can be stated with certainty is that the nations of Europe quickly emerge as the epicenter of power, culture, and activity within the server. It was here that supernations began to formalize, large empires competing for dominance, consolidating smaller states, and projecting influence across the continent and beyond. Before becoming the large, expansive, and some would say bureaucratic institution it is today, the EMC Church existed in a decentralized and largely informal state, lacking structure, authority, and unified direction. It dwelled in small pockets across the newly emerging supernations, often serving as a tool for nation building, culture, or political propaganda. To the south, the Greater Roman Empire, under the leadership of the newly crowned Augustus, one corrupted greed, sought to extend the already massive borders of the empire, propagating a distinct Roman culture and asserting dominance through its provinces of Spain, Italy, Asia Minor, and much of the Middle East. This supernation would come to be remembered as one of the greatest projects in server history. To the north, the British Empire, a formidable power governed by an intense group of players willing to go to extreme lengths to impose their will across the nations of Terra Nova. Among their measures was the formation of a secretive society of players, the Accordo Party, dedicated to opposing Rome's expansion and, in the future, repulsing the growth of the Christian Church in every capacity. Across the English Channel, in France, a region marked by internal instability by a mix of French nationals and foreign players, continually struggle for unification and pacification, ever threatened by outside powers attempting to install allied kings on the French throne. In Central Europe, newly born nations such as the Austrian and German empires sought to assert themselves as worthy superpowers in of themselves, striving to maintain independence from the ever-pressing influence of the emperor and his governors. To the east, the newly consolidated Russian Empire focused on cementing imperial authority across the Urals and the Ukraine, seeking to unify its territories under centralized control. Finally, within the northern lands of what is real-life Latvia today, an old and culturally rich state, the Kingdom of Terra Mariana fortifies its borders to ensure its continuous prosperity and its complex and secluded society remains at peace and unbothered. It would be in this context that the Christian faith would first rise from the embers and cement itself to the beacon of peace and hope that it is today. In this uneasy period, it is difficult to pinpoint the exact moment at which the Christian Church first emerged as a unified entity. Wiki records suggest that by this point, perhaps even since the more ancient era of EarthMC Classic, individual players have begun proclaiming the gospel and forming small Christian communities within their respective nations. The Church today maintains that some of these early figures, those acting with sincere and genuine intent, may be regarded as the first generation of Christian fathers within EarthMC, primitive in structure, yet foundational in spirit, perhaps the earliest roots of the community we recognize today. Some nations, such as Terra Mariana, went as far as to establish their own national Christian churches, employing early iterations of priests and bishops. These experiments, however, proved short-lived, as they rarely extended beyond a second generation of players, and their primary focus remained national legitimacy and cultural development, rather than the formation of a universal church centered solely on Christ. It would not be until later in 2020 that we encounter the first written records and preserved Discord messages detailing a deliberate attempt to establish a unified, independent, and universal Christian church within EarthMC. It was here that 7 players would gather in Rome, and in doing so, alter the course of server history forever. On the outskirts of the imperial city of Rome, in a place known as Vatican Hill, 7 clerics from across Terra Nova gathered, some meeting for the first time, to discuss and formalize what they would call a universal church, focused solely on Jesus Christ. It was to be an institution that would stand in contrast to the well-known toxicity and hostility that often defined server culture. A church that would endure beyond political cycles and shifting alliances, a church that stands today defiantly against the currents of the time, the EarthMC Catholic Church. Driven by a shared commitment to propagate the gospel and authentically represent their real-world faith within a digital realm, these players resolved, quietly and deliberately, to unite. In doing so, they would alter the trajectory of their story within EMC and that of hundreds of players. They were Angelo Cardinalis, a bishop from the region of Rome, Bernard Albany, a missionary from the growing Rio Grande Empire in the Americas, accompanied by his assistant, the priest, Thomas Fake, Alexei Smirnov, a Russian bishop hailing from the forests of Ukraine, Alistar Kais, a priest from the Far East, Louis Raphael, a Spanish cleric, and lastly, largely forgotten popular accounts, one player by the name of Wrench, a close confidant of Angelo. On the forgotten date of the first conclave, 5 among them, Angelo, Bernard, Alexei, Alistar, and Louis, convened once more to determine who among them would serve as the ultimate representative and final authority in Christian matters on the server, the Vicar of Christ on EarthMC, the Supreme Pontiff. After some deliberation and secretive processes, by common accord and internal election, Alexei Smirnov would pass into the annals of server history as the first EarthMC Pope. He would better be known as Alexander IX. Little to no written record survives of the short reign of Alexander IX. Anecdotal accounts, however, suggest a period of internal consolidation and institutional formation. What can be stated with reasonable certainty is that Alexander IX formally instituted the College of Cardinals, who would serve as high-ranking bishops, tasked with helping the EMC popes in exercising their ministry, propagating the gospel to the players of the server, and aiding in his governance of the church. The Pope would appoint Cardinal Bernard Albany as the dean of the college. Angelo was named Secretary of State. Kais, entrusted with the office of the Carmelengo, overseeing the temporal goods and finances of the church. And the newly elevated Cardinal Wrench would be appointed as the prefect of the Apostolic Guard, responsible for the security of the Holy See. In one of the defining acts of his pontificate, Pope Alexander IX would commission Cardinal Angelo to oversee the construction of what would become the centerpiece of the EarthMC Church and the seat of its popes, St. Peter's Basilica. Over the course of several weeks, Cardinal Angelo labored not only to design and construct the basilica, but also to secure political recognition from the Roman governor of Italy, 132 Ogre. In doing so, he established the first formal diplomatic relations between a sovereign nation and the Holy See. Official contact was likewise initiated with the neighboring cities of Florence and Rimini. Because the Vatican's borders lay within Roman territory, temporal authority remained subject to the Italian prefecture of the Roman Empire. Yet, from the outset, the Holy See made it clear that its intention was to function independently in spiritual and diplomatic affairs, seeking engagement with the diverse nations of the world beyond Rome's jurisdiction. In recognition of this emerging partnership, the prefect, 32 Ogre, granted the church 2 permanent seats within the Italian Senate. Pope Alexander IX expressed gratitude for the gesture, yet instructed the Secretary of State that the Holy See would abstain from voting on political matters. This decision established a precedent that, according to the church tradition, remains in force to this day. Meanwhile, Cardinal Albany organized the early administrative structure of the church, assigning priests and clerics to various nations, thereby forming the first primitive diocese and apostolic missions. Simultaneously, he oversaw extensive resource-gathering operations, including expeditions into the Sahara Desert to finance Cardinal Angelo's ambitious construction of the new basilica. It is said that during this formative period, Pope Alexander himself will wander through the Italian peninsula, leaving written blessings upon signs, meeting with citizens, and praying with them. Whether embellished or not, these accounts portrayed a pontiff deeply humbled and engaged with his flock, even amid the burdens of institutional foundation. It would not be long before Alexander chose to quietly step aside from the burdens of the EMC papacy, however, discerning that his service to the church might be better rendered elsewhere. In a gesture marked more by humility than retreat, he entrusted the seat to his successors and retired to lead an Eastern European convent, confessing to the cardinals that there, removed from the weight of governance, he believed he could labor more fruitfully for the work that still lay ahead. It was within those eastern lands, particularly among the growing Russian player base, that his presence would later help foster dialogue and unity between Orthodox and Catholic players on this server, securing a fragile but lasting reconciliation that stands to this day. In his legacy, we see a deeply humble player that is rendered as a herald, the first through the door, one who would begin and set in motion events and systems that would develop into a complex community we see today. In one of his final moments as pontiff of EMC, Pope Alexander IX addressed the cardinals he had appointed scarcely a month before, delivering a message that would establish a guiding principle of the Church that endures to this day.
It is not difficult to recognize that perhaps more so than in real life, in here we are treated as strangers and minority. After all, nobody expects to join a Minecraft server to pray. But we do not stop being who we are when we log in. If we believe in Christ beyond the screen, then that belief does not disappear when we sit behind a keyboard. We are not here to dominate, nor to force, nor to role-play something we are not. We are here because we believe that faith shapes every part of life, even leisure, even community, even a server like this one. So always remember why you are here. Do not be afraid. Be Christians in every setting.